The following program is a presentation of the Options Insider Radio Network. For more programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio in iTunes. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market. From unusual activity alerts to market updates and trading strategies. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block. With your host, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com and co-hosts Mike Tusaw from KnowYourOptionsInc.com and Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com. The Option Block is brought to you by Options Express. Don't spend time worrying about your broker. At Options Express, security, stability, and account protection are the most important responsibilities to our customers. Secure account access, enhanced financial protection, entrusted with over $7 billion in customer assets, established financial stability. Options Express lets you trade with confidence. Stocks, options, and futures, all in one account. Trade with a specialist. Visit optionsexpress.com/OXradio to open your free account. Options Express is a member of FINRA, SIPC, and NFA.
All right, and that rockin' music means it's time once again for the Option Block, your bi-weekly source for options, wit, wisdom, and occasionally some insight sprinkled with hilarity. My name is Mark Longo from the OptionsInsider.com, as well as the old Options Insider Radio Network. And I am joined today on the old all-star panel, I'm very pleased to say, by a old school returning regular, if you will, someone who hasn't been around in quite a while. He's been very busy off doing all sorts of wonderful, interesting things, but now he's back to join us on the old panel today. One Tim Navabi, I'll let you give your new title to the listeners. Tim Navabi, the man holding down the OX hot seat. Tim, welcome back to the show, sir. It has been far, far too long.
Yes, thank you very much, Mark. I'm very thankful to be here. I appreciate the opportunity. I am always a big fan of the show. I mean, I haven't been participating, but I still listen to it. I mean, there's really no other show that is just on so much, just talking about options. It's great.
Oh, so you're the one guy who downloads this in iTunes. I was wondering who that one guy was. Now I know, it's you.
Yeah. And, you know, as you mentioned it there, my new role, I am a new trader consultant, something that I will talk about a little later. But yeah, so that's my new role. So I'm no longer on the trading desk and, listening to John Grigas buy his Groupon stock.
Good old Groupon. Oh, we'll get to that fun one in a minute. But, they listened to you on the show. They said, this man is wasted on the trading desk. We have many more opportunities for him on the new trader consulting side. So if you are indeed a new options trader and you want to be consulted, by all means, contact Tim. He says it right there in the title. He's the ideal man to help you out. Also joining us on the show today, all the way from the Kingdom of Maine, none other than Andrew Giovinazzi himself, the Rock Lobster over at OptionPit.com. Mr. G, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It is a pleasure to be here.
I saw your better half. I saw your better half this morning. We recorded an episode of the Long and Short of Futures Options, one of our other many programs here on the Options Insider Radio Network, live over at the CME this morning. It's funny.
Cool.
I know what to make of Mark, but I'm not sure the CME knew what to make of him when we were recording the show, because he was in full-on Sebastian mode. I'm not sure they were ready for it. They're very prim and proper over there. If you haven't guessed. So when he got into the uncomfortable references portion of the show, it kind of threw them for a loop.
Nothing better than a full Mark exposure.
Yes,
it helps our business tremendously when he's out there.
Yes, he said he's off doing Bloomberg now, so hopefully they're ready for the full Sebastian as well. But I'm sure the listeners out there, I'm sure the viewers of Bloomberg are not ready at all. I don't think anyone could be prepared for that. But speaking of prepared, I think it's time to dive right into the trading block.
The trading block.
All right, and welcome to the trading block. This is, of course, where we digest the day's worth of activity on the old street. And Tim, you joined us for an interesting one today because there's actually something to talk about. It's not one of these unched days on the street, which is nice. Most of the major indices closed up today. S&P up about 0.75 of a percentage point to 1415.5. The Dow up the same percentage to 13,250, and the good old Nasdaq leading the charge up a whopping 1% today to 3,062. And of course, the VIX cash, as we talked about in some recent shows, still loving its flirtations with that 14 handle, closing today down about 2% to 14.32. Good old VIX balloon, they can't squeeze it enough. They keep wanting to get that juice out. A little bit creeps back in. They say, "What are you doing here, juice?" And they squeeze it right back out again. No love for some S&P vol these days.
No. Well, I think this is like the classic VIX pattern. Do you remember, Mark, you're in the pit and everybody's looking at the market and they don't want to adjust their sheets, and we keep going up and up and up, and the vol just keeps going up and up and up. And I think that's kind of what's happening now. Nobody believes a rally, nobody believes a rally, nobody believes a rally. And they're not really letting the at-the-money volatility slide down. So the VIX does not go down. I mean, we had a 1% move up almost, right? And the VIX is only down 2%. So it'll be funny if we're down 0.5% tomorrow. The VIX will be down by like a full. It'll be down by a full handle at least.
Yeah, they'll be waiting to squeeze the last bit of juice out of the old balloon. But you're right. It's like those days on the floor when your sheets are like 8 under at 6 under, and you're like, "Oh, I'm sure I'm right. I'm not going to adjust. The vol will come back to me." It's one of those types of days. You're right. Oh, you think I'm not right? 8 under at 6 under? That makes total sense to me.
Yeah.
That's a very on the floor joke. Anyone who hasn't traded with sheets will have no idea what the hell I'm talking about. But yes, the handful of listeners out there who are old school floor hounds are guffawing right now as we speak. But yeah, that old balloon, I don't know how much left there is to squeeze out of it at this point. At a certain point, it's just what's the point of continuing to squeeze when perhaps you could look the other way and do what you like to do, Andrew, and become a degenerate premium buyer and actually do some stuff. It's getting to be that time of year, time to buy some stuff.
I definitely been buying stuff this week. Today was my week to buy stuff. So we've been dabbling in just about every junky little old technology name with 20 volatility you can find. Going out into Octoberland is where I'm starting to look now.
Did you load up on some Cisco vol like you were talking about? Cisco, of course, knocking it out of the park with their earnings.
It was a nice day. It was a nice day today. I actually was able to sell some calls against it. I sold them kind of at the close. So, I wrote it up, and so that was a nice day. That was definitely. It was a nice, and I still have the SEP, so I sold some weekly August against it, and we'll see what happens. I don't know how long we can keep going because Cisco's such a going with the market stock, but we'll see. But I think I like to keep rolling like time spread type stuff against it, so and we'll see. But yeah, we did bought a little Cisco, so our strategy that our followers were happy.
But yes, speaking of good days on the street. Well, maybe perhaps not good days, the opposite of that. But what Tim was just alluding to, our friend Mr. Grigas sent us a message right before the show saying that he was talking about on the last show, you recall, working that 501 bid in Groupon, where apparently he got filled today. So he's got some long legs in Groupon right now. And I came back to my office today after running around the CME and doing those shows and seeing Groupon trading exactly at the long strike of my formerly short downside put spread, now at the money and upside put spread. Always a good thing. So I had to do our old do stuff again and roll out and down a bit on my downside put spread. So both Mr. G and I, Grigas, I should say, not Giovinazzi, are on the same side of the fence here in Groupons. We'll see what goes on. Closing today exactly at the 5 handle, good old Groupon. So continuing to beat up on this name after earnings. They usually do about 25,000 contracts of late, which is pretty heavy for them. Today they did over 54,000, so a lot of people flocking into Groupon, including a ton of AUG 6 puts. I'm guessing there's a lot of closing activity. 10,000 going up today on open interest of 14,000, so a lot of people flocking in to close out those puts. Maybe a lot of them were fortuitous speculative buyers and were not buying what Groupon was selling post or pre-earnings, I should say, because pre-earnings they had that great run up. It must have been a hell of a short squeeze, driving it all the way up to 8 because it's a full 3 handles lower now, a full almost 28% or so lower here on the post earnings. So not exactly a banner time for any Groupon bulls out there. But of course, I'm scared now that Grigas. I wish I had known that Grigas was getting long the stock before I rolled my puts down and out. I might have had a second thought. You know how Mr. Grigas is very much my contrary indicator to the market. When he's long, I need to get short. So maybe I should have flipped my puts around and gone short. I found out too late.
Sell the juice in there. I don't think Groupon's going to do anything for a while. It's toast. Sell the 90 volatility now. Sell the at-the-money straddle. Buy an upside call for protection and be done.
That's where I was coming from. I didn't sell the straddle, but equivalent to the downside put spread there and or at the money put spread here. But I have the same feeling that Groupon. I think the bulk of the run is done. This juice is pretty extreme. Even if it does continue downside, there's still a lot of things I could do with this name in and around these levels that make it an attractive one to trade. Of course, if it pulls,
you look at Zynga. It's been around the 3 handle for I think a month now.
Yeah. I was just going to say, if it pulls a Zynga and continues to go down to low orbit, then we'll have some other things to discuss. But it's an interesting one. Maybe it's time to discuss the Zynga Groupon trade and see what is to be done there. But I think your trade, your buy of Cisco Vol, I think is going to work out fairly well. This is Cisco highest it's been in a long time. It was laboring well down to the 14 handle for quite a while. I know others, including Uncle Mike, and I think myself, I played a little bit in that range too when it was just doing its inexorable move to the downside. It just would not stop, and it squeezed out even the most diehard of bulls like Uncle Mike. I think it broke his heart around the 15 handle. And now trading 19, so a nice turnaround for Cisco.
Well, 3% yield now. I mean, who would have thought that Cisco would become the income stock? Like, in your portfolios, when I first started getting a 401k when I was like 21 years old, you had the growth from Fidelity, you had the growth portfolio and the income portfolio, and Cisco was like, it was in the growth portfolio. Now, it's like 20 years later, Cisco's in the income portfolio. I mean,
yeah, funny how things change. Apple, Microsoft, Cisco, all in the dividend yield portion of the portfolio these days.
Like, you could buy Cisco, write calls, and probably get easily a 10 to 12% return a year on that thing with the levels it is right now. Yeah,
crazy. I mean, who would think that a router and networking supplier would become essentially a blue chip dividend name in many ways. Of course, I remember back in the late end of the tech boom in the 90s when Microsoft finally declared a dividend. You could see then that the bloom was about to come off the rose in terms of growth, because once that high flyer became a dividend-paying stock, the writing was on the wall for the rest. They would all eventually follow suit, and sure enough, Cisco, I guess you can't really call Cisco a blue chip, but it certainly had enough terrorizing moments to keep it out of that blue chip category. But still interesting to watch them deciding that it's time to pay a dividend. I wasn't paying attention to the earnings. Were they doing any buybacks around that 15 handle as well? Were they?
I don't know about the buybacks. They just upped their dividend by like 40%. It's a pretty big bump.
Yeah, you think they would put that money if they were that enthused? Maybe they're thinking the 19 handle's a wee bit overdone. I think they would otherwise want to put that money towards buying back some of this stock if they like where they're headed.
They're just paying a dividend, And I don't know about the buyback. I didn't see enough of the news. I mean, I think it opened well enough. Didn't really even pull back from the opening much. So at that point, it was just easy to kind of watch it trade up all day.
Yeah, I was hovering around Cisco pre-earnings. I just couldn't pull the trigger. I just been down that road too many times, had my heart broken too many times to go back down the Cisco well. It's too painful of a road for me, Andrew. So I'm glad you paved the way for us.
I mean, it traded $15 like 2 weeks ago.
I know, exactly.
Right, a company, I think VMware bought a virtualization company, and they're like, okay, Cisco's margins are done. That stock and Cisco, like the sentiment, that's just typical sentiment right now, is so bad. Trades $15, I mean, in the company VMware bought, they paid like, I don't know, $500 million or something for it. Who knows? You know, they have like, what, $5 million of sales a year or something like that. Okay, granted, you know, it could be great new technology, but it is going to take a while before you start putting a dent in the $50 billion or whatever a year Cisco sells their gigas.
That's like back in the day as well when all the Linux guys were saying Red Hat was going to put Microsoft out of business, and look where we are 10 plus years later.
Exactly.
I remember all the guys clamoring to get into the Red Hat pit because that was where the action was going to be. Linux, baby, that was the future. And not so much. Speaking of the future, there is a name reporting right now that is a huge market mover. I know a lot of our listeners will be interested in this one, so I had to bring it up, of course. And that is, of course, COSI. Ticker symbol COSI. Trading closed at a whopping 84 cents today, and I guess the numbers didn't exactly please the street, trading 73 cents in the after hours, down a whole dime, which is significant for them when they're trading 83 cents. So yes, if you've been in a COSI recently, an interesting chain, and I'll have to dig into this one. I don't know why they're trading at such a depressed value. Obviously, some serious fundamental issues with the way this company is being run. If this thing is such a deal or such a low valuation, but an interesting name, very very popular here in the Chicago area. Great pizza and sandwich melts, and of course you can buy the stock. You can buy 10 shares of the stock for the price of a sandwich. So
that's what they should do as a giveaway, a promotion.
They should.
Share a stock with every panini.
They have square bagels. I mean, come on. Where else can you find a bagel?
Exactly.
Square.
Exactly.
Squiggle.
That alone is worth another $1 in the stock, I think. You know, this is just crazy. This one came on my radar recently, and I was watching it, and I was just, wow, what is going on here?
Actually, in Wall Street Journal too, yesterday or the day before, they, basically the guys that own it are a little bent out of whack, that they can't run the company right, and they have 100-something outlets, and they don't make any dough, and blah blah. It's just like an earnings whatever.
Yeah, this one really should be on the same trajectory as the Chipotle, very similar in many regards. Small, kind of custom, unique boutique outlet for food, and yet they just obviously can't kick it into high gear. Maybe they should have McDonald's buy them as well.
Comparing another company to Chipotle, it's blasphemy there.
Well, what's funny is there's a lot of the stores, or the model of the store is kind of nice. I mean, because McDonald's is always looking for the next. That would obviously be an upgrade on food, on food style for a Mickey D's. That's actually now all of a sudden, hey, it's a potential takeover target. Let's see.
There you go. Rumors started on the option block. COSI's in play.
COSI is in play, and let's see. It was like this. Oh no, options trade on COSI. Oh, you know why? They got all delisted.
Yeah, they got delisted. It's 80 cents. You don't really need many options when it's 80 cents, Andrew. I hate to break your heart. I know you want the 10-to-1 leverage on the 80-cent stock, but I think you can find some other ways to trade it.
That's strike calls. I want to buy the 50-cent strike calls.
I want to pay $1 for the $1 calls. Come on, let me do it. Let me get out there and swing for the fences. Well, Tim, I know you've been far and away from the trading desk these days. Anything catching your eye in the markets these days? Any of these new traders that you're consulting bringing up anything interesting for our listeners?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's two questions, actually. I mean, as far as what I notice, I don't know. Maybe, what's with the lack of volume? I mean, what was it yesterday? I mean, just had really very poor volume. I mean, overall, I don't know what's going on there. Right? I mean, you guys agree with me?
Oh, yeah. These numbers are in the toilet, which is why we kind of hit on this on the last show. You're getting all these weird kind of aberrant moves and all these underlyings because a handful of shares are trading, a handful of contracts are trading. So it's hard to really get any real sort of sentiment or real gist of what's going on because these moves are so exaggerated off such little news and such low volume. It kind of makes these are obviously very dangerous times from an options perspective if you're not sure what you're doing because these exaggerated moves come back to bite you, particularly because the bulk of our listeners, I'm sure, are heavily short gamma. And unless they know how to play that, it could be a dangerous environment to be short all this gamma. Everything's moving around and vol is nothing.
Yeah. And it seems like 50% of the people I talk to, they're all waiting for a pullback. That's all I hear. I'm just waiting for a pullback, then I'm going to get in. I'm just waiting for a pullback, then I don't know. I don't know if you guys hear that a lot. I mean, it's, but it's interesting. I mean, I hear that constantly, and I don't know the answer to that question. Yeah, and then and then the other half, they are ready to go. Everybody wants to get involved, with trading tech. Everybody wants to get involved with buying some healthcare stocks. We are busy. Futures. Lots of people want to trade futures. Lots of people want to, play the grain market. It's interesting. We are busy. I am consulting a lot.
Well, that's good to hear. It's funny. People looking for a pullback. Why would we pull back? We have that triple put lurking out in there of Bernanke and ECB and everybody else ready to step in and assist. Should we pull back? So take that free flyer on the upside. Why not? Right? What's the worst that could happen? So, you're right. If people are looking for a pullback, there certainly are other areas they could dive into. They don't have to go equities. Corn hasn't really been much of a pullback of late, but there are other areas. Oil was trading pretty down until recently. So there have been other farther afield areas and investments they could get into if they're looking for a retracement. They don't need to sit there and wait for Apple to retrace before they dive back into the market, like everyone seems to be doing.
Groupon, Facebook, those are pullbacks, right?
Yeah, Groupon. Hell of a. Come on, join Mr. Grigas, 501. Work the bids, everybody. Let's go. Pick that puppy up to at least $5.01. Make John look like a genius here. Where's Facebook? Oh, Facebook today, south of the 20 handle again. I didn't notice that just now. Facebook closing today, $19.87. There's all that talk about those 20 puts. Are those is that the level? Is that the place to start hitting out on Facebook? And
the lot supposedly, there's like the huge lockup is coming off. For
when is that coming off?
Today.
Well, there you go.
And also there was like huge short interest. Like we were looking at, if you look at the option pit blog, the Facebook options were pricing about a 20-cent hard to borrow cost on Tuesday, and it's actually gone now. So for whatever reason, people found some stock to borrow between Tuesday and today because the borrow costs have gone down a whole bunch. But there were people were shorting the bejesus out of it. Now there's huge short interest in it. It's like 90 million shares. And, and if Facebook doesn't crap out, I think we could actually get a squeeze on the other side. I just don't, who knows how low it's going to go. But, there's some short interest now holding it up. That's not 100 million shares is not, 90 million shares is not small potatoes. So.
Yeah. I guess all these people who were locked up were just champing at the bit to get the hell out. They bought it at 30, 35, get the hell out at 20. Why not, right? That's a great trade. Do that all day.
I think the people getting out bought it like 2 cents.
Yeah, they got it. They got it much, much earlier than that. Of course, if they were some of those people who were very privileged to get in early, you had many other chances to get out before the IPO. You had all those secondary offerings that people were locking in years ago when the Russians were buying and then Goldman bought in. So there were a lot of different areas you had to get out and get some liquidity if you wanted to get out before the IPO. So these lockups, who knows who these people actually are. These are maybe some late comers to Facebook, late employees, all sorts of people who missed the early opportunities to really cash out and take the real money off the table. But speaking of taking the money off the table, we're going to close out and table the trading block for now and dive right into the odd block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, and that funky tune means it's time for the Odd Block. I love that tune. It just puts me in the mood for some unusual activity. And speaking of unusual activity, we've certainly been cranking out quite a bit of it on the old optionsinsider.com. So if you like what you hear here, there's quite a bit more of it on the old optionsinsider.com for you to check out. So surf on over there and let us know if you like what you find. I have a feeling that you will. But speaking of unusual activity, we're going to kick things off with Novartis, ticker symbol NVS. This is the name. This is a healthcare solutions company. If you're not familiar with them, they are specialized in R&D, manufacturing, and marketing of a variety of pharmaceuticals and other healthcare products. This one's been On a pretty big upswing of late, since about late May, where they were trading a little over 51, closing today at over 60 and a half to be exact. And it was for a comparative volume day for Novartis. This is a pretty light name to begin with, usually doing about a little over 1,000 contracts a day. They did nearly 4,000 today, which was interesting for this one. Not surprising given the substantial upswing, about 18% since over the past few months in this name. We're seeing some people coming in and rolling up some protection. In fact, I think rolling is the theme of our odd block today. It's rolling season. It's rolling time right before expiration. Everyone's coming in to roll up, roll out, and just roll all their positions. So here we have someone here who came in today and sold about 1,000 of the SEP 57 half puts for a quarter and picked up about the same amount, almost 1,000 here, of the September 60 puts. They were purchasing those. So they're rolling up their former downside protection here from the 57 half to the 60 handle out there in September. And, of course, doing this gains you a lot more delta on this position. We're swapping in the SEP 60s. They went from about a 10 delta to about a 40 delta, which, if you're looking for some downside protection, is the way you want to go. So someone obviously thinking they want to lock in some gains here in Novartis. So rolling up their protection. And in a day like today, not too much else on the unusual activity side, so we end up going with some interesting rolls. Speaking of rolls, next up on the old roll table, we have the Dow. A lot of size rolls going up in the Dow today, both in DJX and in DIA. We'll start off with DJX, which is, of course, the SIBO options, the SIBO Dow Jones options, where we saw the AUG 130 calls trading nearly 14,000 times today on pretty much mid-market prices, picking up so that was a sale of the AUG 130s, coinciding with a buy of about nearly 14,000, the exact same amount, 13,831 to be precise, of the SEP 133s for $1.25. This was a net credit trade of 45 cents here on the day. And an interesting spread. Obviously, this person rolling up and out here on his long Dow Jones position. So, Tim, we were just talking about people looking for a pullback. This guy positioning for more upside ahead. But he wasn't done with that. He wasn't done content, should I say, just with the DJX. He also took to the DIA, where he rolled, which is the spider contract, obviously. And he picked up the exact same trade, 13,831 of the AUG 130s went up there as well, a closing sale transaction where he picked up about 14,000 of the SEP 133s for about a 125. So he did pretty much the same spread, same trade, same roll for about the same net amount of outlay there. And so an interesting trade. This guy obviously looking for some continued upside here. We parsed some of the underlying a bit. It is possible this guy was doing it tied, but we don't have any clear indication of that. So on the outset here, it looks like this guy is rolling up and out to continue some significant upside exposure here in the Dow. Andrew, I'm guessing you're not a fan of this because, A, it's a lot of upside. We've already talked about that in the past a number of times, how great it is to buy upside calls. And then, B, of course, I know you're looking for a pullback here before we get continued rallies.
I think so. Well, I think we do need somehow. All I can say is that, I kind of agree with you. So I don't see how we keep going up until somehow the volatility needs to come in a little bit. So that's just my side thought on this as you're looking at that.
So you think we need to be at VIX cash of around 12 or so before you'll be buying into this rally and think it has legs?
Kind of. To be honest, because everybody's too worried about. I guess just Tim was before. Everybody's too worried about the, they're all waiting for the pullback. Well, the problem is as we wait for the pullback, that might never happen, but they're not going to let the volatility collapse either. So just a small, I don't know how germane it is to what we were just talking about here. But
everything you say is germane, Andrew.
And I don't mean Jackson.
I was going for the Jacksons. Gotta love Jermaine. Always my favorite of the Jacksons. How could you like him? How could you like Michael more than Jermaine? He had the true talent of that family. I think he got
famous just because Eddie Murphy used him Tito stopped teasing. That was Eddie Murphy.
If only we had Sebastian here for our 80s music references, we would be we would have the answer to all of our questions.
Party all the time. She likes to party.
We have one more here, I think, real quick. This is actually a review of some activity from yesterday in Huntsman, ticker symbol HUN. This is a manufacturer of differentiated organic chemicals and inorganic chemicals. So there you go. Think back to your high school and college chemistry and the difference between organic and inorganic chemistry, and you'll have a clue about what these guys do. This one really took off yesterday with a lot of activity. Today it was up about 1% on the day to 1467. Yesterday it was trading a little bit lower, up to 1414, but it had gapped up about 4% to get to that level. Not surprisingly, we saw a lot of people flocking into upside calls up in September. SEP 14s, 15s, and 16s really saw a lot of activity yesterday. This is the name that on a typical day is doing about 4,000 contracts of late, and they did, today even, they did over 90,000. So a lot of activity going up in Huntsman of late. But yesterday we saw quite a few of the SEP 14s, 3,200 times on open interest of just a little over 1,800 contracts. They were purchased with the bulk of them coming in a big sweep of over 2,000 contracts, lifting the offer for about 65 cents. The SEP 15s also going up 3,200 times for about 50 cents or so, including a block of about 1,000. I'm sorry, trading for 20 cents. And the most aggressive of the bulls, the SEP 16s, were nearly 5,000 of these guys went up on pretty much no open interest, including a big block of 2,000, lifting the offer for 25 cents. This is, of course, yesterday where call volume was up about 7x normal. Of course, today we saw a lot of activity in Huntsman as well. Quick on-the-fly analysis here as we're closing up the old odd block. The Nov 11 13 looks like it might have been a risk reversal going up 23,000 times. I'll have to look and see if paper bought or sold that, in conjunction with the AUG 13 puts also trading 13,000 times. That looks like that's closing paper on the AUGs because, as you talked about earlier, it is rolling season, it is rolling time, and there are 27,000 of those calls open. He didn't bother closing out the put side. Looks like he had this risk reversal or a strangle on in August as well. AUG 11 13s both have about 25,000 on open interest on those strikes. Didn't bother closing out the puts. Instead went straight out to November. Put that Nov 11 13 on again. So we'll have to dig in and see if this guy's picking up strangles or risk reversals or selling them. But a lot of activity in the Huntsman over the past few days. Today, of course, doing well over about 20 odd times its average daily volume again today. So Huntsman lighting up the old tape, and that is going to do it, unfortunately, for the old odd block. But like I said, if you want some more activity, by all means, surf on over to theoptionsinsider.com. But now I know I'm excited. I'm sure you are as well, listeners. We're going to dive into the Xpress Block and find out just what the heck Tim Navabi has been up to since the last time we talked to him.
The Xpress Block, brought to you by Options Express. Options Express lets you trade where and when you want for every level of trading. From advanced charting, free daily trading ideas, and free educational resources, Options Express is the online broker for all traders. Best of all, Options Express allows you to trade stocks, options, and futures all in a single account on powerful yet easy-to-use trading platforms, including mobile devices. Visit optionsexpress.com/OXradio for your free account. Options Express is a member of FINRA, SIPC, and NFA.
All right, and welcome to the Xpress Block. This is where the boys from OX hold down the driver's seat, and we haven't had Tim in the old driver's seat in quite a while, so I think we're all excited to have him back. And Tim, I'm curious, I'm sure a lot of our listeners are as well, what exactly is a new trader consultant? What do you consult on? And give us a little bit of insight into what you're doing over at OX these days.
Thanks very much. And that's a good question. Before our team started up here, if somebody was new to trading options or somebody was new to Options Express, they kind of had to come to Options Express and kind of hit it running. They were either talking to someone on the trading desk or they were talking to someone in customer service. The trading desk was really focused on trading. The customer service desk was really focused mainly on trying to service an account, make any kind of change to the account or anything like that. But there really was no place that someone can go and say, time out here, I'm kind of new to all of this. I'm new to Options Express, or I'm new to trading options. I just need to have a conversation with somebody who isn't too busy. So that's essentially what our team does. We're sort of a kinder, gentler OX rep now. Not that those guys are not kind or gentle, but we will stay on the phone. We will take time to do walkthroughs. We will take time to discuss basic strategies. So that's really what our new role is. We are on the phone all day long. And again, it's talking to, people who are new to Options Express, and they're saying, look, I need to get to know your platform a little bit better. Can you show me where this is? Can you show me where that is? Show me some tips and tricks. And we also then again, have the customers who say, I'm new to options trading. I went to a workshop. I read some books, and can you talk to me, have a conversation about trading options, and more specifically trading options at Options Express. And we will talk to them. A lot of times what we'll do is we will enroll them with an Options Express account in order to trade in the virtual account. So that's primarily where we go with those conversations. So that's what a new trader consultant is up to these days.
I'm always impressed with the lengths you guys go to provide some service. I mean, obviously, OX, not the cheapest broker that ever existed, but you also run fairly discounted commissions, and you'd think for that you'd only get a certain level of service, and yet you guys, here's a great example, putting together the new trader services team, where someone like Tim, you could just spend your whole day on the phone with Tim if you want, and call up and walk through some strategies, walk through some different ways to use the platform. Hell, I can use that sometimes, and I'm looking at some of the different things you guys are rolling out at OX. I'm like, what do I do with this thing? Yeah, I should call you up, Tim, and have you walk me through it.
That's exactly what we do.
I'd imagine that this new Idea Hub thing really is helping you guys out, giving you something to talk about on a daily basis.
It is, yeah. It really is. A lot of our tools. I mean, people will call up and they'll say, why should I trade with Options Express? And, we can say, well, let me talk to you about our tools, So that's a pretty lengthy conversation. But yeah, it's. I think it's a really good thing. I think it's working out really well. We're getting a really good response from the clients. Because now they're not sort of feel like they're taking up time on the trading desk, and yet they're not talking to someone in customer service who may not be very well versed on options trading. So everybody's very happy, and trading is very happy too, because now they really can kind of focus on the trading, and customer service people can focus on, servicing the accounts, but people want to have a conversation, who are new to Options Express or new to trading, can have a conversation with us.
So let's say I'm that proverbial newcomer to the options biz. I'm listening to this show right now. I found it maybe on the Options Insider, or I found it just surfing through iTunes. I'm curious about options, and I want to learn a little bit more. How do I get a hold of you, Tim Navabi? Do I have to call the trading desk and they route me to you, or how does that work?
Well, if you call our main number, we have a new prompt, and the prompt, I think it's prompt number 4 now, and it's to open a new account. So that's how they would reach us, is through that prompt. And again, if you're new and you may say, well, I don't know if I want to open up an account, but I don't think that's sort of the wrong label for it. I mean, some people will call and they'll say, who are you? What are you? Yeah, exactly. I am new to this options trading thing. And after a conversation, we actually do walk them through, an application. There's no obligation for, funding the account. And they don't necessarily have to completely finish the application as far as sending in a signed, application with an ID. But, we can get them up and going with a virtual trading account. And that's a good place to start for most people.
So there you have it, listeners. If you want to spend some time on the phone with Mr. Navabi, you want to walk through some of the new features they have on the OX platform, or you just want to test these here options waters and see if they're for you, then dial up the OX number, hit that option number 4, and you'll be directed right to Mr. Tim Navabi. I guarantee it.
I don't know about that yet. We've got a good team. We've got about a half a dozen
Oh, great.
of us.
And you're right. You know, when you were on the desk, and guys like John on the desk now, they'd love to spend more time talking to people, but they have to get trades done too. So especially on busy days, there's a queue building up, and they have to get to those calls. So this is nice to have another option. People who want to spend a little bit more time, have their hand held a little bit before they can really they feel comfortable diving into the deep end. This is the perfect option, pun intended, for you. So there you go, listeners. That's what Mr. T-Knob has been up to all this time. So you can stop writing into me and call him himself.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Mark.
Thank you, Tim. I'm glad to learn about all the fun stuff going on with you these days. But that is going to do it for the Xpress Block. And now we're going to dive right into Around the Block.
Around the Block.
All right, and those car horns mean, unfortunately, we are getting near the end of our show. But before we go, we have one final segment. Of course, the Around the Block segment, where we talk about what's on our horizons, what we're watching going into the old weekend. And Mr. Tim, I think you have a few interesting queries to bring up here for the old Around the Block.
Sure. I remember Andrew talking in early summertime. I don't even think I was on the show. I think I was listening to it. And you kind of were explaining what you saw on the VIX, and kind of thought how it would be, headed lower, kind of where we are right now. And I just really kind of wanted to ask, I mean, you had more about the last comment you just made about the VIX, or like you said, everybody's waiting for a pullback, but it may not happen, but yet the VIX may move. And I was just wondering if you can kind of clarify on that, or kind of clarify like on what's. I'm not asking you where it's going, but just like what is the picture of the VIX? Why is it doing what it's doing?
Of course, we should make all these listeners take the gold course at Option Pit, but I will share with you what little wisdom I have on this. Basically, what happens is, the VIX has it is a partial Vega-weighted index. It isn't a total Vega, but the reality is it gets its number from a sample of strikes. Mm-hmm. And for the VIX to decline, right, the volatility all down the curve has to decline. And what happens is, if what we call it is like it's a two-speed movement. So if the index just sort of goes up and up and up, all right, all you're doing is moving kind of from the at the money now to a lower at the money to a lower at the money. Mm-hmm. The problem that we have sometimes is you're getting that lower at the money, but they're compensated by kind of kicking the skew, basically the slope of the downside puts, because every option has a different strike. So if the vol keeps kind of getting compressed as we move up, they kind of compensate that by saying, well, I'm not going to sell those downside. I don't care if the at the money vol is going lower, right? But I'm not selling downside puts for nothing. So what happens is the relationship between the at the money puts, the at the money strike, and the out of the money puts starts to the slope, that line of volatilities all down the curve starts to increase a little bit. Mm-hmm. So like yesterday, it's like the 10 delta put was like 140% or 138% or something at the money. We're looking at the SPY. Today was like 147. So what they do is they're going to let those downside puts drift up a little bit, right? Because what they don't want to have happen is they don't want the index at 1440, and they're selling all these downside puts for nothing, even though the at the money volatility is very low, because we're not moving very fast, right? We're having a real low realized volatility. So they compensate by kicking the downside up. Now, when they stop worrying about the insto implosion that we've been having, you're going to see the curve come back in, right? And you're probably not going to see it come back in until we actually drop again. So, right, we drop down, and once we drop down, you're going to pick up higher at the money volatilities. Mm-hmm. And then they're all like, oh, we're not so worried anymore. Now we're getting a little more, there's a little more juice in the options, so we can let the curve come in. And when all of those options start coming down together, that will actually lower the VIX, because all of those high Vega downside puts start to decline. And that actually, so there's the VIX has a lot of funky movement in it. And until you really see skew collapse, you're really not going to see the VIX come in. So right now it's struggling to go down as we go up for kind of that reason. I hope that wasn't too complex, but that's what happens.
I think we should have every listener of the show and every new option trader, if it's possible, spend some time trying to balance some skew curves and trying to fit vols and just go through that process a few times. And so as just doing that alone will, I think, make them far more cognizant of how these things actually perform in the real world. And also, they'll be in on the joke a little more. We were talking about earlier about how these levels are way off and you don't want to readjust. But yeah, that will definitely inform them, I think, of this process a little more and how these things actually perform in the real world. But in lieu of that, we have you guys over at OX and, of course, the boys over at Option Pit who can walk their hand through that sort of thing. Of course, you can also find a lot about options, volatility, and skew on the old optionpit.com. But as we head into the weekend here, Andrew, of course, I think we're all looking for perhaps if given we stay here at these same levels, VIX has to come in a little bit tomorrow, I would think, given what we've seen of recent history going into weekends. VIX not exactly known to hold levels going into weekends lately.
Right, and I think, if they actually just let it collapse, like I just said, letting the curve kind of come down and letting the volatility all along from the at the money all the way to those way out of the money strikes start to, come in a bit. I think that's good. That's kind of what we want to see. But who knows what everybody thinks. As long as the euro kind of keeps going up, everybody's not so freaked out. The Italians sold some bonds on Monday. They didn't get rock bottom interest rates, but they didn't get, the insane interest rates they thought they were going to get a month ago. So, those are like small but good things. And if people truly aren't worried about the weekend, take a look at the VIX. If you actually see it go down 8 or 9% tomorrow, there's a lot less freak out going on. Let's just put it that way. Even we could be down, I'm going to say we could be down 0.5% tomorrow, and you could see the VIX really come in. And I think overall that's going to be much more bullish for us going forward.
Well, I'm looking here as we're talking on some of the VIX open interest here, and there certainly is no shortage of people who think we're due for a quick pop or a turnaround. I'm looking here. There's about 90,000 of the SEP 35s open here, and 80,000 of the SEP 40s open on a lot of these strikes. So there is some substantial weight to the upside. Nearly about 50,000 of the SEP 42 halves, 40,000 of the SEP 50s. There's some love for some VIX upside here still. So
there is, and the VVIX actually almost touched 100 this week. So the volatility of the options. Last week when we were actually considerably lower in the index, right? Considerably lower in the SPX. The VVIX was trading like 80. Volatility of the VIX was the VIX options around 83. It actually backed off a little on the close today, which I think is probably, again, another slightly bullish indicator. But it traded 99. So while volatility was imploding everywhere, the actual volatility of the VIX options was going up all week. Okay, figure that out, everybody. I want you to put that to bed. And I want you to chew on that. And that is a little bit of panic. Okay, what's going to go on these auctions? Is Europe going to screw us again? Blah, blah, blah. So I like to see, I'm never trying to pick a top or a bottom with volatility. I always like to see it start to roll over before mostly just because I'm an old chicken and I don't like picking tops or bottoms anymore. When I was 22, I thought I could do that, but I've learned better since then. So with the VVIX coming in, it's a little, with the volatility of the VIX options declining a little bit, it's a little less pressure. So I think overall it's pretty good. Like this rally might happen, but eventually we are going to need to see, I think anyway, for some sort of little confirmation, to the value you can have with all these little tea leaves. But that would help us tremendously.
Looks like someone may be capitulating and finally giving up the ghost and all this VIX upside. 10,000 of the SEP 60s traded today. Looks like a closing sale. So someone finally said, you know what? I just can't take the heat anymore. SEP 60 not happening anytime soon. So yeah, that's probably my trade of the day right there. 10,000 SEP 60s for a nickel. That's a lovely thing. Someone was really swinging for the fences there. Maybe we'll leave on that high note. But before we go, Tim, anything you're watching around the block here? I know you're talking to all these new traders. What are they talking about? Are they talking about VIX a lot? What are all these new callers coming in? What are they asking about and talking about?
Like I said, they're asking about futures. They're just wanting to participate in some way. And a lot of them are talking about tech. And that's pretty much it. I mean, it's surprising, with the volume, like I was saying yesterday, because I'm busy all day. Our phone is constantly ringing. There are people that, do want to get in, and they are signing up, they're funding their accounts, and, they're trading. So, yeah, that's kind of what's happening here.
Well, good news on your front. Unfortunately, we have only bad news here on the show because it's time for us to go. We wish we could hang out here and just do this all day, but we all have other things to get to, unfortunately. And you guys, listeners, have the weekend to get to because you're listening to this on Friday. But, of course, before we go, we like to check in with all of our panelists and see what they have coming up that may intrigue you, the listener. So starting off with you, Mr. Rock Lobster, what is coming up in the land of the pit?
I'm so lame, I have no idea, to be honest. We just had a webinar, though, on Wednesday, which we encourage people to download for free. It's trading butterflies, and actually what's more important is how to adjust them when things get messy. It is Mark Sebastian at his best. A really good showing, using, we basically sit there, use the trading platforms everybody else uses, and run through adjusting routines. When vol goes up, gamma explodes, everything gets ugly, and helping people with some kind of adjusting routine for short gamma. As Mark and I well know, almost anybody that's traded a short gamma position has had to adjust it at some point.
As I was just doing this afternoon. Fun stuff. Fun stuff. All right, thank you for that. Andrew and Tim, what is coming up in the land of OX? Any fun webinars, any fun educational events?
We have a workshop. We have a workshop in Kansas City on Saturday, September 8th. It's from 8 a.m. to 3:15. People can find out more about that at optionsexpress.com.
And remember, dial into that main number and hit 4 to talk to Mr. T-Knob himself and the rest of the, New Trader Consultant team. I like that.
That's correct.
All right. And, of course, if you want to learn more about any of the topics we discussed on the old program today, unusual activity, options alerts, options breaking news, or any of the other fun stuff we hit on today, Groupon, a lot of fun stuff about Groupon going up lately. By all means, surf on over to theoptionsinsider.com. You can, of course, find all of our other programs here on the radio network. Of course, you can find those in iTunes. I know a lot of you have been asking about some interesting stuff coming up on the website and maybe even potential for a mobile app. We're working on all that stuff. It's coming up down the road. Right now, we're in the process of a massive overhaul of the back end of the website to really bring you guys a lot more functionality down the road. So we're still kicking the tires and lighting the fires on that, but that should hopefully be rolled out within the next month, and then we'll be able to offer a lot of interesting new stuff on the website going forward. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see you next week right here on the Option Block.
Become a part of the Option Block. Just visit www.theoptionsinsider.com/forum to post a question for the hosts. You can also submit questions to twitter.com/optionblock or leave a voicemail at 312-544-9356. Make it interesting and your question just might make it on the air. The Options Block is property of the Options Insider Incorporated. All rights reserved. preceding program was a presentation of the Options Insider Radio Network. For more programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com/radio or search for Options Insider Radio in iTunes.